It's a Leafs game day. The Maple Leafs will be hosting the Pittsburgh Penguins, and Sidney Crosby's coming fresh off the 500 goals. So we'll have Hunter Hodes of Locked On Penguins to join us to chat about that and tee up the game. But we also got some different stuff to chat about today, perhaps some updates from practice. So that's what we got here on today's episode of Locked On Leafs.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Leafs podcast, your one-stop shop for all things Leafs. I'm your host, Mike DiStefano from TSN 1050 Toronto Radio, also known as Al's brother from TSN's Overdrive and TSN 1050's Leafs Lunch. With me, my permanent co-host of the show, it's Dave Morrisui from Sportsnet, also a writer from the NHLPA, and just a reminder that this is a daily Maple Leaf-centric podcast, so be sure to subscribe to the show for free wherever you get your podcasts. And now you can check us out on YouTube as well. Just search up Locked On Leafs. A couple of things that we got to get to today. We're going to have Hunter Hodes join us from Locked On Penguins. We're going to get into the Penguins game, but also just kind of show some love for Sidney Crosby. What a feat that he accomplished the other night. 500 goals in his career. So we're going to show him some love and also tee up the game tonight between the Penguins and the Toronto Maple Leafs. But before we get there, a couple of quick news items that we got to get through before bringing him into the fold. The Maple Leafs have brought a player back into the fold, Dave, today. They went out and they claimed Adam Brooks off of waivers. Your thoughts on that one, bringing Adam Brooks back in here? Remember how upset people were when he got waived and claimed by, was it claimed by Montreal? Yeah, claimed by Montreal on the first day of the season. Remember how irate Leafs Nation was over that? And here he is, back 4 months later.
Well, and not only that, he was waived and the Leafs kept Michael Amadio, only to then waive Michael Amadio. So that the feelings didn't ease up there. Just like, you waived Adam Brooks just to waive Michael Amadio. And at first I'm like, oh, he was with Vegas. Like, have to remember that he didn't last long in Montreal. I thought he got sent down. I didn't realize he got claimed.
Yeah.
So, nice to have a familiar face back that, it's clear. I think the Leafs wanted to get him back the last time, or they missed out on getting him when he went to Montreal. So he's back in the fold. It might take some time to figure out how they're going to get him back because of cap reasons. I think right now they sent down Timothy Liljegren to make it work, but to get that all sorted out, it's going to be quite the cap shenanigans or jumping through hoops there.
Yeah, so as of now, the move that they made and whether or not this is a paper transaction, I guess we'll find out more so tomorrow. But Timothy Liljegren was sent down, didn't require a waiver, so he was just sent down to the minors to open up a little bit of money there to add Adam Brooks off of waivers. But I saw a tweet saying that he's actually going to be heading to the IR, and maybe tomorrow Brooks gets added to the IR, and then Liljegren comes back up and or ends up playing the game against Pittsburgh. I guess, did you see something about that? I thought I did.
I just checked cap friendly right now. He is listed as on the injured reserve, so maybe there is something that he's gonna go, because it's funny because I don't think Sheldon Keefe really talked, like, we hadn't really heard about it, about the move. I think actually came out.
Keefe spoke before 2 p.m. when waivers come out, so he didn't know, but he did say, what he did say was the lines that we see at practice might not be the lines we see in tomorrow's game. I wouldn't look into it much, was the quote that he used today. And what I thought that meant was the fact that in practice we saw that the bottom 4 D pairings back to normal, back to the Muzzin Hall, Liljegren, Sandin, after they had been split up in the third period in the game on Monday. And I thought, oh no, does that mean that maybe he is going to put those, the bottom pair in a bit of a blender here? And then we saw this news kind of pop out about an hour and a half later. So I don't know exactly what he meant by that, but perhaps that's what he meant. But it looks like Adam Brooks might be headed to the IR, and the whole Timothy Liljegren thing could just be a bit of a paper transaction, which I mean, I didn't even know that you could be sent down or placed on waivers if you were on the IR, to be honest with you.
Yeah, that's the part that I'm struggling with because I didn't know that could actually happen, but we already know that Vegas needed to make space for Jack Eichel, and it
Yeah.
was like I think between the Leafs and Vegas, I think Vegas has a little more issues with the cap than the Leafs, but it's such a headache. It is always such a headache with all this cap stuff that they have to do just to get a player that's not even making $1 million to get him to work in the cap system.
I know. They're currently 15 million over LTIR, or was it 15 million with LTIR space? It's ridiculous what Vegas is doing. But yeah, so looks like Adam Brooks is back on the squad, and let's quickly take a peek at what he's been able to do this season since being waived. Played 4 games with the Montreal Canadiens, just 1 assist, then got claimed by Vegas. 7 games with the Golden Knights, did score 2 goals. Did he score one of those against Toronto? I feel like he might have actually done that. No, it was a shutout, or they played twice. No, I can't remember. Anyways,
They played them once in Toronto. That was
it was a 4-0 shutout, if I recall.
yeah, the Leafs won that game, and then did they play in Vegas? I'm even trying to remember that now.
They may not have played there yet. No, I'm trying to remember too, and I just for the life of me can't. But regardless, he's got 2 goals through 7 games with the Golden Knights, and then got sent down to the minors at one point this season. Was playing with the Henderson Silver Knights, and he had 3 assists through 5 games in the AHL. 3 points in 11 games so far this season in the NHL. So not exactly a barn burner type of player. But last year with the Maple Leafs, he did have 5 points in 11 games. He looked okay. But he's a guy who's come up through the Marley system. He's been with the Marlies since 17-18, and we all know who the head coach of the team was in that time, and it's Sheldon Keefe. So he's a guy that Keefe knows very well, and somebody who, if you're looking for a 13th forward, just that extra added depth into the organization, they feel very comfortable with Adam Brooks being that guy, especially if they do decide to move on from somebody like Nick Ritchie. They want to make sure that they have a little bit more depth in their organization to come up and help play. So that's that news. That's Adam Brooks back on the Maple Leafs. So if you want to dust off your Adam Brooks sweater, if you got one to wear down to the game tonight, you can. And 50% capacity. Thank you, Doug. Moving it up a few days here to allow 50% capacity at Scotiabank Arena. Allow an extra, what would be about like another 10,000 people to be able to go in there and watch Sidney Crosby play tonight. It's going to be a fun game. Like I said, we're going to have Hunter Hodia Locked On Pens join us in just a moment to break it down and talk about Crosby. But Jack Campbell going to get the start in net tonight after a pretty good start against Seattle Kraken. Do you like this move, going back to Jack Campbell to see if maybe he can try and build off of the momentum that he may have gotten from the performance on Monday?
Yeah, I think you want to reward a goalie who had a good effort. They were seesawing between him and Mrazek. Mrazek didn't get the job done in Vancouver, so it made sense that they went with Campbell in Seattle. Now I think you don't want to keep flip flopping goaltenders. You want to give one guy a little bit of rope to see what he can do. I also want to see, as I mentioned before, I want to see what Campbell can do against a team that's you know up there in terms of competition. And, this is a good Penguins team that's on a roll. And I think, the Leafs need to start showing that they can beat these types of teams because playoff time, this is the type of opponent you're going to have to figure out how to beat.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's going to be a really big game. You think about Jack Campbell and his struggles recently. The only 2 games that he's actually played well were against the New Jersey Devils and the Seattle Kraken, 2 non-playoff teams. Pittsburgh, top in their division right now, top of the Metropolitan, a really, really good team. You've got Crosby riding high coming off of his 500th goal that he scored the other night in Pittsburgh. They're a good squad. Good squad. Should be a really, really good game. Why don't we take one break here, and when we get back, we'll bring in Hunter Hody from Locked On Pens. We'll chat all things Sidney Crosby, kind of how we'll remember him, how Penguins fans remember him, and just celebrate the player and the man that he is for not only Pittsburgh, but also for all of us up here in Canada. And then we'll also tee up and preview tonight's game between the Leafs and Pens, and we'll do that after a word from our show sponsor today, which is betonline.net. Football might be over this season, but basketball and hockey in full steam for both pro and college hoops. From all the latest odds, totals, player performance props to where the next coach is going to land, betonline.net is the number one spot for all your sports betting needs. BetOnline remains the best sport for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. It's not just basketball. BetOnline.net is your source for hockey, boxing, UFC, right? Also, the odds of the Olympic coverage and information. You can head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. Bet Online, it's where the game starts. Welcome back into a Locked On Leafs, Locked On Penguins crossover here. I am the host of Locked On Leafs, Mike DiStefano. Joining me is my co-host, Dave Morisuti. We got Hunter Hodes from Locked On Penguins with Pittsburgh in town, getting set to take on the Toronto Maple Leafs, which should be a pretty good game. Two squads who are really rolling right now. But before we get into the game and we preview it, I think we got to take the proper time to celebrate one of the game's best players who had just an amazing milestone last night, and that is Sidney Crosby. No longer Sid the Kid. It's Sidney Crosby. He's the man who scored the golden goal and the man who now has 500 for the Pittsburgh Penguins. I mean, how special of a moment was that for you as a guy who covers the Penguins? I'm sure you grew up a massive Pens fan, cheering for Sidney Crosby your whole life, and also to do it at home and against the Flyers. It just kind of all lined up perfectly, didn't it?
It was poetic. I think that's the way, to say it, man. It's also his 50th goal against the Flyers. It came on Jaromir Jagr's 50th birthday, another Penguin great. It was assisted by Evgeny Malkin, who has been there by his side, ever since he came into the league. And, and of course, you nailed it. He scored it against, the biggest rival for the Penguins. And it was just really magical because, for, of time about a decade ago, I don't think any of us knew this was going to happen just because of what happened with the David Steckel situation. And then it got worse with Victor Hedman. And, a lot of us in the fan base were like, he's skating, but is he ever going to play again? He was not cleared for contact for so many months. And then you finally have the comeback and, it felt obviously real again just because of what's happened since then. But, it's just, it's hard to put it into words just because of what he's done for this city and this team. But it's something that I was looking forward to for, I think, a long time now. Obviously, his rival Alex Ovechkin hit that mark a long time ago, which is that's he's the greatest goal scorer I think the league has ever seen. But just to see Sid do it, against his rival on that night, just from just Evgeny Malkin, it's you can't script it better than that. And it came from his office. The hashtag Sid down low is a saying that a lot of us on Penguins Twitter use just because he's so deadly behind the net. And he did just that. He got that pass from Gino and then just fired it glove side past Carter Hart. He had no chance on that. And, it looked like it was going to happen a couple games prior. I would have been probably more upset if it happened in Ottawa because there was only about 250 fans there or something like that. Then they play New Jersey.
It's basically the janitors are there and then their friends. They get tickets to bring their friends, and that's about it. That's all that's sitting there. It would have been a waste. And one of the cooler things too was just seeing the bench all skate out onto the ice as if it was an overtime winner. It wasn't. It was in the middle of the game, but still the whole team understood the gravity of that moment. The building was going wild, and they all just legs over the bench, skate right over to him, massive pile up, and it was really just a surreal moment.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't expect, honestly, the entire team to come out. I thought it would just be, like a quick celebration, just like for his 1,000th point. That was about 2017, I believe, when Chris Kunitz scored that. But when the entire team just came on off the bench, I was just like, well, it's time to get at least a little emotional just because, I hope every Penguin fan just cherishes this because obviously he's on the wrong side of 30 at this point. Who knows how long he's going to keep playing? Nothing is ever guaranteed. But especially just for a game like this in February, where the Eastern Conference is kind of, I should say, wrapped up playoff teams wise. The seeding is obviously still going to we'll probably get into that at some point. These are milestones that you're going to remember where you are just for the rest of your life when you saw Sidney Crosby score his 500th. And for the life of me, had he not missed so much time with that concussion, we probably would have been celebrating close to his 600th last night, which is obviously disappointing. Though I'm hoping at some point he does get to do that. And then seeing Mario Lemieux's speech. Just a player, obviously, that he needs no introduction. Sid, I know, played with him for a little bit, and then his family is there, and they're tearing up, and it was just a really emotional, I think, night for just a lot of us. Especially I wasn't alive for the peak Mario years. I wish I was, just because seeing him and Yager do the business was just incredible with how amazingly skillful they were in the early '90s. But I'm pretty thankful that I've been able to grow up with this player for 2/3 of my life at this point, and seeing something like that will never get old.
And I can think back to when Sidney Crosby made his return from the concussion against the Islanders. That was probably one of the better individual performances I've seen, just because of the sheer emotion of that. Do you remember that game and just what you were feeling in that time?
I remember exactly where I was. I sat down to watch. I knew it was going to be an emotional night. I believe I was only 13 at the time, if I recall correctly. I was getting ready to actually go to hockey practice because I was late for it, but I didn't really care. And right when he scored that goal, I think it was my mom and I just jumped up, and I just probably let out the biggest scream. It was just, it was awesome. Because then you saw the fans were just had the signs and everything. Because again, we never knew this was going to happen again, because we never knew if he was going to play. So that was just talk about probably the most emotional night during the Crosby era outside of the Cups, and this, I would say that's obviously right up there. So I remember that like it was yesterday. I'm surprised the neighbors didn't call the police or something, because we were just so excited. Of course,
they were probably joining in on the party with you guys.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, you would think so. One of the coolest things about Sid, and I didn't realize this obviously until I saw them put out the graphic yesterday, but of his 500 goals, 107 different teammates assisted on 107 different players. I don't know why that is just such a mind-boggling statistic to me, but what it shows me and what it says is just how go with the flow this guy is. Didn't matter the amount of turnover that this guy had. You look at who his wings have been his entire career. There's a couple staples he could be. Chris Kunitz was a staple for many years, but for a lot of his career, there was kind of just kept churning out wingers upon every year, whether it was Connor Sherry who would come in, Pascal Dupuis, he had some time with Gensel, with Phil. There's, a number of guys who he's, been able to play with, and he plays at the same rate no matter who he's with. And he's always the best player on the ice no matter what. And he elevates everyone else's game. And when I saw that number, 107 different players, it was just probably the most mind-blowing stat that I saw in reference to all the numbers that were being thrown out to me about these milestone from Crosby last night.
It was weird. There were some players on there that I was like, okay, I know I didn't remember seeing him assist on a Sidney Crosby goal. It was just a great stat that the Penguins PR team put out there. I was surprised that Gonchar was still top 5 because he hasn't been with the team in a decade. Was definitely, I was like, wow, I did not realize. I watched him play so much with Sid. I just didn't realize that he still was in the top 5. Gino's going to be up there, and Gensel's going to creep up there sooner rather than later. But it was pretty crazy. Old man Jack Johnson was tied with 4 with Mario Lemieux. They both had 4 assists on Sidney Crosby goals, and just the both ends of the spectrum right there. It's just awesome to see. But that was really cool.
I'm looking at it now, and maybe I want to try and pull out some really interesting names that I would have. Mickey DuPont. Who the hell is that guy?
Oh man!
Who is?
Gotta be. I think that's gotta be from his rookie year or something. I don't remember him from any of the early Cup teams.
Me either. But he's got an assist. He's got an assist on one of these goals here. Lyle Odelin. I've never heard of that player in my life. Lyle Odolin. And like, I consider myself, a pretty smart guy. I played the video game growing up, and to me, that always allowed me to know all the rosters and all the players. And I've never come across that name in my life, but somehow, some way, he was able to get an assist on a Sidney Crosby goal. Rick Jackman, a throwback name
Rick
there.
Jackman, yeah.
Zdeněk Mahalik able to get
Yeah,
to Aaron Asham.
Yeah, I remember
So many guys were just like, really? I mean, it's actually hilarious to look at some of these names. Brent Johnson, Luca Caputi, former Maple Leaf, Luca Caputi, another one there. Just so many guys who factored into this fantastic milestone. But of course, Geno Malkin assisting on 109 of them, being the top guy. And it was just fitting that he also assisted on number 500 too, almost as if it was meant to be. The thing that I think is really cool about Sidney Crosby, though, is that there's a large portion of like the American fan base that loves Sid for what he's done for Pittsburgh, with Pittsburgh being, just like a big American market or a good market in the hockey world. But then there's, all the love that he gets from Canada. And when I think of my favorite Sidney Crosby moment, Dave, I'm sure you have the same exact favorite moment, and that's the golden goal at the Olympics in 2010. And I'll always think of him as the guy who scored the golden goal. I was having this conversation on my radio show earlier, Leafs Lunch, and the conversation kind of got sparked. Like, well, do you think of Sidney Crosby as your 3-time Cup champion for the Pittsburgh Penguins, or do you think of Sidney Crosby or the guy who scored the golden goal? I'm curious to see how you guys define his career and how you first think of Crosby, because I always think of him as the guy who scored the golden goal. I would imagine, Hunter, maybe you have a different perspective, being an American and being somebody who's born and raised and lives and covers the Pittsburgh Penguins, though.
Yeah, I consider him, obviously because it was scored against the United States. I'm not gonna, like that moment too much. It's probably the only time I've ever rooted against Sidney Crosby. But I think the Penguins fans, and me especially, we think of him as the guy that's won 3 Stanley Cups. The second time they've gone back to back. I think a lot of us also consider him just a top 5 to top 10 pure NHL player of all time, as well, and just someone that when the city needed a spark for this hockey team, because it was down in the ditches during the years before Crosby, when you had Rico Fata as one of your leading scorers, and I mean, not many people obviously wanted to go to the game just because they were so bad. But when the city badly needed someone to just give the team a spark, they won the lottery. I know tanking and all that, but it's been history right there. So I think the city and just all Penguins fans around the world, think of him as just the player that's won 3 Stanley Cups and the 2 Conn Smythes and the multiple Hart trophies and the scoring titles. And obviously he still has that golden goal, because that's one of the best hockey memories in recent memory, and I think of all time as well, just because of the circumstances. And he had the World Cup of hockey as well. But I think here, he's just seen as, I should say, also like a living hockey legend. I should say.
Yeah, that's basically what he is. Dave, how about you? How do you define Sidney Crosby in your eyes?
For me, it's like a guy that delivered whenever called upon, right? I mean, you talk about those Olympics, and people were talking about how he wasn't performing. Like, going into that game, he hadn't, had the Sidney Crosby type of effect. And it's almost like, you want to talk bad about Sid, he's going to pull up and he's going to make you look silly. And, I always remember just like the famous Iggy call too. Like, when you think of that goal,
Yeah.
and just, and at first just doubting whether it went in, right? At first, because he started celebrating, but like nobody thought that shot was gonna go in. Especially poor Ryan Miller there. But yeah, like for me, it's just a guy that had so much pressure on him as a number 1 pick, as you said, Hunter, had to pretty much revive a Penguins team that was on the verge.
Not just the number 1 pick, but touted as the next one.
Yeah.
Right. You have Wayne Gretzky and he was touted as the next one, the next great Wayne Gretzky, and I think he's lived up to the billing. I mean, the term generational talent gets thrown around a lot, but I think when you look at it, I mean, I can't think of anybody else I would really put there who's lived up to the bill. And there may have been guys who, like there was a lot of talk about Eric Lindros coming out into starting his career, but injuries kind of derailed him. He never really became that generational superstar. But Sidney Crosby did do that, and he did that. And probably the only one since Wayne. And then you could possibly, I guess you could put McDavid back into that category as well. But I think the fact that he lived up those expectations, and you said it right, as a guy who was called upon and delivered when called upon, whether it was for Team Canada, whether it was for when he was playing, junior, whether he's playing for Canada at the World Juniors, or whether he was playing for the Pittsburgh Penguins. He was called upon and he delivered. And he's one of the greatest hockey players to lace him up. I think we can all at least come into agreement on that one. The Leafs are hosting Sidney Crosby and the Pittsburgh Penguins tonight in Toronto. Should be a good one. Should be a fun game. This was one that was rescheduled technically from before the All-Star break, or before the Christmas, after Christmas was supposed to happen. I think it was like the 29th or something like that. And obviously, we know that did not quite end up happening due to the COVID pause and whatnot and restrictions and all that jazz. But here we are, finally going to have that game, and I'm excited for it. It's going to be a really fun one. It's got two teams who are rolling right now. The Pens, they've won 4 straight. The Leafs have won a bunch of games here as of late. They're rolling right now. It's two powerhouses in the East. Hunter, from a Penguins perspective, what are you expecting out of this one?
I mean, I'm expecting, I should say, a pretty fast game. I know the Leafs, they're pretty deep at forward. It all starts with their top 6, which is just loaded with talent. Austin Matthews obviously needs no introduction, and Mitch has been great. Tavares and, Nylander and all those guys. The Penguins have played Toronto pretty well this year. I know the first one, I believe, was the Mark Donk game where I'm trying to remember. I want to say Evan Rodriguez had a couple of goals, but I think
it was a gross game.
Yeah,
basically the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins came in, laid a beat down on the Leafs. Yeah, we remember that game.
That was I think when the Penguins were really dealing with their COVID problems. Luckily, that's knock on wood, that's not the case. Going into this one, there's been no positive tests as of yet. But the Penguins come into this mostly fully healthy, minus Teddy Bluger. He'll be out for a couple more weeks. And then Jason Zucker, I think, is out for, the next month, or with a hernia that he had to have surgery on. So other than that, they're pretty good to go. Tristan Jarry, I'm sure, will get the start. They gave him the night off against Philadelphia. They got to give him some rest and probably also go get a backup. But that's, I've been touching on that on my show for probably the last month because the backup has just not been up to par. But, I always love when these two teams go out. I'll go out of my way to turn on the Sportsnet feed, and that's no disrespect to Mears and Airy, because I like the insight that Mears gives. Airy is sometimes he's a little odd as a color commentator, but the Sportsnet, just especially for this game when how Sid just got his 500th, I want to hear just what the Sportsnet commentators have to say, and I also think it's a better produced broadcast. I should say. But, these games are always fun. The second meeting, I think the Penguins probably played their best defensive hockey of the season, or one of their best defensive hockey games of the year. And if I recall correctly, you guys are supposed to have half capacity in Toronto for that game for the first time. So it's definitely, I'm sure the fans that are going to be in there are going to be pretty fired up. And, I checked the standings today as well. Third place looks like you guys have a nice little cushion over Boston. I know they're hurting right now with Marchand out due to suspension, though, and Bergeron. But it's looking like it's going to be another tough first round matchup there. Whoever you get, it's the same for us, of course. But for this game, though, it's a potential, I should say, conference final matchup. Well, I'm not going to make that joke, but anyways.
Oh, you already did. Just by admitting that you didn't want to make that joke, by calling it a joke, you made it. I hate you so much. We should really just hang up the phone on this guy.
I know.
Not this call. That's so disrespectful for you to do. You have 2 Stanley Cups in the last 5 years, and you're going to go ahead and throw that slander at us. I can't believe you did that, Hunter. But you're
I'm
not
sorry.
wrong. You're not wrong. I'm hoping that is the case. I'd love to see a Pittsburgh Leafs playoff series. I mean, to see Sid for a 7-game series up against the Maple Leafs, I think would be fantastic. Like, you think about the ratings that would do, whew, that'd be unbelievable. One of the things though that I want to ask you about is Tristan Jarry, because he's having a amazing season. To me, he's definitely, as of now, on the ballot for goaltender of the year for the Vezina. But how much of this would you say is him taking a big step, and how much of it is kind of the system and the defensive play in front of him that's contributing to the success? I mean, it's a bit of both. I understand that, but how much would you say is attributed to which end there?
Yeah, so I think it's a combination of both. They got the new goalie coach this offseason, Andy Chiodo. He's done a terrific job, I think, with Tristan. Mike Buckley was just not getting the job done. And, I think one of the biggest things I noticed when the season first started was that Tristan was a lot more aggressive. He wasn't sitting, way back in the net and just letting the play come to him. He was actually going out and challenging shooters a lot more, which, he didn't usually do a lot. And I was like, okay, that looks a little interesting. And, I also noticed that his movement has gotten a lot better. And I think, Chiodo has really worked with him on that. And you combine that with how good defensively the Penguins have been this year. I believe they're top 5 in expected goals against and actually goals against this year. And, you get a goaltender who, you said it, Mike, I've been saying it on my podcast as well. He is a Vezina contender right now. And, if you would have asked me and every Penguin fan after that series against Islanders, and no one would have believed you if he was going to have this kind of season, just because he was the reason why they got eliminated. The Penguins were the better team in that series. I will die on that hill. I'll say that. They had the better underlying numbers. They were scoring fine. They just lost the goaltending battle. And, that's the thing. It can kill you, and it can be the great equalizer. And, it's the first thing happened with the Penguins there.
We know that, don't we, Dave? We know that very, very well. Goaltending in Toronto has been a touchy subject for many, many years. Finish up your thought there. I kind of cut you off, Paul.
Yeah, no, of course. I was going to throw it back to you right after this about Jack Campbell, because he's been awesome too. Though a little up and down, I should say, I guess lately, but I still think he's up in my top of the Vezina contenders. But yeah, it's been night and day. I think the big thing is, though, I mean, his high danger save percentage is pretty good. He's saving, I think, upwards of 16 to 17 goals above expected this year. That's one of the, it was top 5 for a little bit. I believe it's number 6 right now. He's just, it's really crazy to see the turnaround, because this is the best hockey we've ever seen him play. And, I think most Penguins fans, if you were to ask them, they would have been like, yeah, as long as he's league average or a little above league average, because that's usually what the Penguins need to go on deep runs. You don't need to be Matt Murray 937 in 2017, but you can be Matt Murray 923 in 2016 when that's a little above average. I wouldn't say that's elite, but it's still good. But he's been like 930 good, Tristan, that is, this year. And it's a major reason why this team continues to win games. He gives them a chance to win every night. And if he continues this into the playoffs, because that's where you really write your redemption story, I think the Penguins are going to be a really tough out for any team that they play. But I'll also throw this back to you guys. Jack Campbell, for a while there, he was also, I always check Money Puck, and he's top 5 in goals saved above expected. His save percentage is really high. Did both of you expect Campbell to be that good this year, or were you just like, I would hope that maybe he's a little average too?
You want to take this one, Dave, first?
Yeah. Did I expect him to have to put up same numbers he had last season? I didn't, because the expectations changed for him from last season to this season. I think he dealt with injury issues. The schedule was a little more favorable to the Leafs with the all Canadian matchups and some teams that just were not very good. He would go up against. He got off to, the start he got off to made people think otherwise. And then things kind of were starting to fall off a little bit. And I think maybe we're starting to see that, resurgence a little bit. I think he's somewhere in between of what people expect him to be. I don't think he is the, elite, like Andre Vasilevsky type, but I also don't think he's the, below average starter level as well. So I think what we're seeing right now is he's trying to find that in between that can make the Leafs successful. it's been a little bit of a struggle lately, but I mean, the good thing is that the Leafs have been able to keep things afloat, and Peter Mrazek hasn't been terrible either. So, yeah, I think his play lately. I mean, this is probably going to be his biggest game in a long time, just because it's against a good opponent and an opponent that has kind of gotten in his head. I think a little bit with some tough games against.
Yeah, it definitely. Last time that these two played each other, the time before, the first time this season, it did not go over well at all. I think we all know that. And there were some bounces in there, so it wasn't all necessarily just awful goals. But to answer the question, though, yeah, I think that he's definitely punched well above what was expected of him. I don't think we were expecting league average goaltending. I think last year he proved that he's a pretty quality goalie. But to go out and put out a 940 save percentage through the first 2 months of the season is definitely not what people were expecting. And it's not what the Leafs were expecting either, because they went out and they addressed the goalie position in the offseason to make sure that they had a backup in case Campbell, did fall off a little bit from his numbers last season. And he didn't do that early on in the year when they first got Mrazek. But and then the next 2 months has been not very great. He's had like a 325 goals against over the last little bit, a sub 900 save percentage. The biggest difference is the high danger save percentage. You talked about how Tristan Jarry has been really good. Not so much for Jack Campbell the last little bit. I looked this up like earlier in the week actually, and he was dead last actually in the last calendar month in qualified goaltenders for high danger save percentage. So that's going to be the biggest difference between Jack Campbell in the first 2 months and the last couple of months here. But I think to Dave's point, he's not as bad as he's been recently. He's probably definitely not a 940 goaltender. Hopefully at this point, he can start to level out. He had a really good game on Monday when they got the win over Seattle. And hopefully he can carry this over into this game against the Penguins. The biggest issue for him is with all these cancellations that they had through COVID, or the fact that they weren't playing any home games, they were rescheduling all their home games. This team wasn't able to get into a rhythm. And I think Jack Campbell was the one who got hurt the most by that. And now that they're starting to, play out the full schedule, we can start getting back into that rhythm that he was in before, where he was lights out, dominant, Vezina caliber goaltender. So I think that he will level off here, and he's not going to continue to be a 320 goals against and an 893 save percentage. I think those will go back up to roughly league average, if not a little bit better. And he's in a contract year too, so he's going to definitely need to do it if he's going to want to continue to get paid the way that it was trending, at least in early in the year. If you're a Leaf fan, I wonder, and this is probably a conversation that Dave, you and I can have maybe later in the week or on another time, but maybe you're a little bit happy that there was a struggle. Maybe it took that number down just a little bit, but you could still end up getting a pretty solid goaltender you could feel comfortable playing for about 50 or so games a season. One more question for you here before I kind of get your keys to the game tonight. But I personally, I think I have Mike Sullivan as my Jack Adams frontrunner at this point in the year. Just the amount of adversity that Pittsburgh has had to go through this season, and they just keep chugging along. Like, it's a true next man up mentality. And I always kind of like to credit the coach and the leadership for that type of success. And for me, Mike Sullivan deserves it. Is he getting that type of love? Is that talk kind of coming around in Pittsburgh? Are you chatting about that at Locked On Pens?
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, it's always been as the two best coaches in franchise history, him and Badger Bob. Obviously,
Wow.
piece, of course. I think people are starting to talk about how he's probably passing Badger at this point. And don't get me wrong, what he did was nothing short of incredible. But with what Mike has been doing ever since he took over, I don't think there's a better coach than him that has coached this franchise. And I might get some heat for that because I was not alive to watch those teams that Badger Bob had. But I do know because that how much he meant to the team. And I know that's obviously Scotty took over after he passed away. But, just with how this team continues to win with 4 of their top 9 forwards out, or 5 of their top 9 forwards out, or half of their defensive corps out, or, their starting goaltender out at times with COVID and all that. Heck, even last year, they were top 5 in man games lost. They won probably the toughest division in hockey, and they got home ice out of it. Right now, they are on pace again to win the Metropolitan Division right now. And I know the top 4 teams are pretty good and the bottom 4 teams are not, but in my view, he is one of the 3 best coaches in hockey. To me, it's probably him, John Cooper, and Barry Trotz at the very tippy top. And then I think it's everyone else. The job that he has done with his team is nothing short of incredible. It's his system, it requires a 100% buy-in. When it looks great, the team obviously looks great, but when it's lacking, the team is obviously struggling. And, there's been quite a few games where, the Penguins are not bringing it just because his system is hard to play on a consistent basis. But when it works, and it works quite a bit, they are a treat to watch at both ends of the rink. And usually, a lot of coaches have short shelf lives. He's one of the most longer tenured coaches in the league right now. I know for a fact that all the players in that locker room and in that organization respect him for what he has done. Because, I've seen some fans sometimes clamor for him to get out of here and go find another job. I just don't take that stuff seriously because, he's not the reason why they've lost a couple times the last couple of years. They've had just, I think, more poor goaltending, and they haven't finished their chances, even though they've outplayed the other 2 teams. But this city will always be lucky to have him. And, I think we are at the point that he is the best coach in this franchise's history.
Yeah, I've got a futures ticket on him winning the Jack Adams over at betonline.net. I placed it. I think I was able to get him at about 12 plus 1,200, I think.
He should. He probably should have won it last year, and he wasn't even a finalist.
Yeah, so I like those odds now. They've gone up. I think he's the betting favorite actually at this point. I made this bet like a month and a half ago, maybe 2 months ago, and I couldn't believe the value that I was able to get there. So I'm hoping that he does pull through. That'd be beneficial for both you and I. That'd be pretty sweet. But I had Brian Burke on my show Overdrive today, and I heard him talking about Mike Sullivan, and he was saying he legitimately referred to him as a top 5 to 10 coach in pro sports at the moment. Not just hockey, but in pro sports. All pro sports. And I'm like, from a guy like Berkey who's been around the block for as long as he has, it's pretty high praise there. Dave, why don't we start with you first here? So to preview tonight's game, I figure we'll kind of do a 3 keys type of analysis for tonight. Leafs and Penguins at Scotiabank Arena, 50% capacity. Whoop, whoop. Let's go. So Dave, why don't you give me the 3 keys for the Leafs to try and secure the full 2 points tonight? And then afterwards, Hunter, you can hop in for your 3 keys for Pittsburgh.
I think for me, it's try to get a jump on the Penguins a little early, because I think you got the crowd get the crowd buzzing a little bit. I think that would help in their favor. They scored first against Seattle. That seemed to kind of ease the tension after pretty rough days in Calgary and Vancouver. So I think starting a good start would be a good thing. Second, I mean, Jack Campbell's going to have to deal with some really tough assignments. Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, the Penguins have just a load of weapons. So I think, he's going to have to kind of avoid those weird stretches where he gives up an ugly goal. If he does, he's going to have to find a way to bounce back quickly, because the Penguins will smell blood if he's not on his game. And then a third one for me, I think the Austin Matthews Sidney Crosby matchup. I think you're going to see a lot of Crosby and Matthews. If it's not Matthews, it's going to be John Tavares. But I think that matchup for Leafs is going to be crucial.
Should be fun. Should be a lot of fun. A special bonus one for myself. Fighting for middle ice. Whether it's in front of Jack Campbell or whether you're fighting for ice in front of the opposing netminder, which I assume is going to be Tristan Jarry. that to me is going to be important for this team. Try and generate those chances from the slot, from the inner slot, get those good looks, and then limit that defensively because you allow Rust and Gensel and Crosby and Malkin, you give them point blank shots from the slot. There's a good chance that they're going to put those in the back of the net. So, fight for that middle ice, protect the net to me is going to be a big time key. And then offensively, obviously, do the opposite, cut through into the middle of the ice and end up winning some battles out in front of the net. Your keys to the game tonight for Pittsburgh, Hunter?
Yeah, so I think obviously the biggest one for me, we like to call this on Penguins Twitter and all that, the vibe check kind of thing. So it was actually started from Jesse Marshall of The Athletic, and normally how the team looks after the first 5 to 10 minutes usually will tell us how the game is going to go. And most times if they come out buzzing those first 5 minutes, I'd say probably 90% of it they win. So that I think is really crucial to me, how they handle, I guess, that re-energized crowd in Toronto. If they look pretty good, okay, I'll potentially pencil in a win here. Obviously, that 10 to 15% happens a lot more frequently than other Penguins fans would realize, but that I think is a big key. The second one, I definitely want to, the Penguins are going to have to run the gauntlet starting with this game. They have the toughest remaining schedule of any team in the league during these final 32 games. I really just want to see what they're made of. And, they haven't, I think, played a top premier team in the league in a little while now. So, just, limiting the top 6 of the Maple Leafs chances defensively, that's going to be crucial. David, you touched on the Matthews-Crosby matchup. I would like to think that if Keefe maybe does Tavares, but I'm not really sure. Sid is just, I think he would welcome a matchup against Matthews, but I feel like it would also be, it can go either way, I guess. But I just, with how Sid much better defensively, I guess he is now. It's going to be quite a treat to watch. But definitely defensively, just limiting those chances, and then third, just can the depth, I think, continue to score a little bit more. Brian Boyle got his 6th goal of the season against New Jersey just a few days ago. Dominic Simone scored against Philadelphia, and Chad Riedel did too. Combined, they only have basically 3 goals this season. The Penguins' depth, it saved them for a lot of the early season. Now it's gone, I wouldn't say in the trash can, but it's gone down a little bit just because, Brian Russ is on a 16 goal and a 17 game heater. Sidney Crosby producing really well. Jake Gensel's been awesome. Evgeny Malkin's been at a point per game pace. I want to see if, some of these depth players can step up. And, of course, a bonus, special teams. The Penguins' power play has been much better as of late. It started the season near the bottom of the league, but now it's up in the upper part. I think it's right around the top 10, if I recall correctly.
Currently 11th ranked power play.
11th, yeah. I knew it was right around there. I just didn't know which one. And then the PK, it's been top 3 all year. I believe. Yeah, last time I checked, it was number 2. So that's, I think, going to be a big key, just because the Leafs obviously have so much talent on their top power play, and they can just go full Harlem Globetrotters if they feel like it. So for me, those are my big keys in the night. And of course, I had to add a bonus in there as well.
You're going to have a lot of fun watching this Leafs. Well, maybe not, but watching this Leafs power play from a Leafs perspective has been a lot of fun lately. Like that was actually a really good way to say it. They can go very Harlem Globetrotters-esque and just zip that puck around with so
I
much
say
fun.
It because the Penguins are the same way.
Yeah, and look, the Leafs have a top 3 PK unit themselves. So yeah, special teams is going to be big. I think limiting both teams to just try and win this game at 5-on-5. Don't allow anybody to get the man advantage. Probably a good key for both squads in tomorrow's game, or tonight's game, rather. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. All right. Really appreciate taking the time here, Hunter. And, I think it should be a fun one. It should be a good game. I think right now it looks like on Bet Online, Leafs are favored. Leafs are favored at home. So we'll see what happens, though. But if you do want to place a wager, you can do that at betonline.net. But I think that's going to do it for us here today on the pod. I'd like to thank everybody for listening and supporting the show. You can subscribe to Locked On Leafs wherever you get your podcast. Also, Locked On Penguins wherever you get your podcasts. And Hunter, appreciate it. Enjoy the game tonight.
Yeah, thank you all for bringing me on. And this is probably going to be an awesome game, so I'm looking forward to it.